Well, hey everybody, and welcome to Flannel Graph Bible Stories, where our pastors use this lovely flannel graph to tell, Bible stories. So let's see what Bible stories we're learning today.
Hey friends, we're out here on the deck. We're not on the deck. We're in a Sunday school classroom with a flannel graph. This is awesome, classic. Awesome way to tell Bible stories, accounts that really happened back in history and God's amazing work that he did through his people. God made promises, and God made a promise to this man, Jacob, that he would be faithful to him and that he would provide for him. And Jacob had 12 sons. That's a lot of guys. That's a lot of boys, right? And they loved their father, and they surrounded their father as they are in this flannel graph story. But there was one brother amongst the 12 that Jacob favored a little bit more. He loved him very much. He loved all of his sons, but he loved Joseph so much that he gave Joseph this amazing, colorful, they call it the Technicolor dream coat. Why did they call it that? Well, Joseph had been given this gift by God, that Joseph started having dreams at night. And these dreams were extraordinary dreams that were about his family. In fact, one of them was about sheaves of wheat. And the sheaves of wheat, 11 sheaves of wheat bowed down to this one other sheaf, a bundle of wheat. Now check this out. That bundle represented Joseph. In other words, all of these brothers were going to bow down. Ooh, they don't like that very much. To their brother. No way. They didn't want to do that. Why in the world would they bow down to Joseph? Well, that wasn't the only one. Not only were there sheaves of wheat, but Joseph had another dream. A dream that the sun and the moon and the stars above all would bow down to Joseph. Oh, the brothers thought, this is too much. Unbelievable. Because do you know what that dream represented? It represented that even the sun and the moon, in other words, Jacob and his wife, would bow down to Joseph. And the stars, representing the brothers, would also bow down to Joseph. Well, these brothers had had just about enough of their brother. They wanted to get rid of him. And so, one day, they were out watching over their sheep, and Jacob told Joseph to go check on his brothers. I want you to go check on your brothers. Okay, Dad, I'll do that. I'll bring them some lunch as well. So, Joseph went out to check on his brothers. Well, they had moved the sheep. And when he finally came upon his brothers, they said, there's that dreamer. Let's get rid of him. And so what did they do? They actually took him and they threw him, whoa, gabloosh, in a well. And they left him there. They thought, you know what we're going to do? We're going to tell our dad that he's actually gone, that a wild animal has attacked Joseph and he's dead. That's pretty terrible. Would you say that's terrible? That's terrible. But then one of the brothers decided that's not right. Let's not have him die. So they fished him out. And along came a caravan that was going to Egypt, a caravan of some hairy bunch of Ishmaelites. The Ishmaelites took Joseph, chained him up, and we're going to sell him into slavery in Egypt to the Pharaoh. And so, Joseph was brought in as a slave, sold into slavery in Egypt to Pharaoh. Well, God's hand of favor and goodness, God's faithfulness to Joseph never stopped. Even in the most terrible and difficult circumstances, God was faithful to Joseph. And Joseph soon rose in power in the land of Egypt. Well, those dreams didn't stop. Joseph was given more dreams. He had dreams about all sorts of things, and he could interpret other people's dreams as well. And the Pharaoh even had a dream, and he couldn't figure it out. And so he called on Joseph to explain his dream. And the dream was this, that there were going to be 7 years of incredible plenty. In other words, their fields and their crops were going to thrive, and there'd be so much food. But after those 7 years of plenty, there were going to be 7 years of terrible, terrible drought and famine. Well, that's what Pharaoh didn't understand, and Joseph did. And so Joseph explained that to the Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said, "You're brilliant. You should work for me. What do you think I should do?" And so Joseph said, here's what you want to do. You want to store up in your barns all of the plenty. And then when the famine hits, all of the people in the surrounding areas of Egypt will come to you, and they'll need food, and you can provide for them. Pharaoh thought, that's amazing. Well, wouldn't you know it, that the famine hit, and the brothers came back needing food. Now, years had passed since this took place, since they had thrown their brother into the well and sold him into slavery. And they came back, and Joseph was there serving, but they didn't recognize him. They had no idea it was him. Well, friends, long story short, Joseph reveals himself to his brothers as they bow down to him. They were afraid. They were actually afraid that Joseph would sell them into slavery. But Joseph's heart was faithful to the Lord. And Joseph knew that even in the hard circumstances, God had a plan. That even being sold into slavery, even being in prison for years, God never abandoned Joseph. And God had a plan to provide for his family. And so eventually, even Jacob, his father, was brought back, and they all had a family reunion. Who doesn't love a family reunion? In Egypt. And God provided for all of them. And they settled into the land, and the family was restored because God was faithful to them all. And Joseph trusted God throughout that entire time. This is one of the greatest and longest stories in the Bible. Genesis chapter 37 through 50. Wow, what an account. You should read it with your family. Listen to what God is doing, and then consider what God is doing in your life. That God is faithful to you even when things are really, really hard, or you wonder where He is. He is faithful to you. That's all from Flannel Graph Sunday School.